Hello, Bookish Besties, and welcome back to this week's Friday 5 episode of the Book Solid Podcast. I am Hannah Caitlin Parker, and I am here with you on this Friday to share my Friday 5. If you're wondering what the Friday 5 is, it is just a fun, quick little pop into your ears where we share 5 of our favorite finds, pieces of advice, or 5 of anything basically that we are loving from the week before. So I am going to jump right in and I'm going to share with you my 5 pieces of advice, must-have buys, whatever you want to call it, for podcasting. Each week I get so many messages from you guys on Bookstagram, even on Facebook, asking, how do I start a podcast? And I am not a gatekeeper, not a secret keeper, and I want to see all of my bookish besties and sisters be successful in this creative space. And so I am not going to keep any secrets from you when it comes to podcasting. We have done a whole process of trial and error with podcasting, and I think we're finally hitting our groove. We have switched over, I was going to say transformed. We have transformed, but we have switched over to a new streaming platform that so far we are absolutely loving. We were recording all of our episodes via Zoom, not using any video features, only using audio. And through a podcast with another podcaster, the Paring Down podcast host, Shannon, we discovered a platform called Riverside. This is going to be like a whole free ad for Riverside. So if you work for Riverside and you're listening and you want to sponsor the Book Solid Podcast, my email is in my bio, by the way. But anyways, we are loving Riverside. It has video features. It has audio editing that we did not even know existed. I will just let you in on a funny little behind the scenes. Last week, we recorded an episode and it sounded like I was screaming and Stephanie was whispering, and we were stressing because it was Tuesday night and we still hadn't figured it out. Our episode had to go live on Wednesday morning. I love to schedule our episodes for about 4 in the morning. If you are looking for another piece of podcast advice, schedule your episodes super early because you're going to have those people that are like crazy and wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to work out and do all those fun adult things before their kids wake up, which is not me, by the way. But you're going to have those early risers that want to listen to their podcast before their day starts. And like, it's an honor that you want to start your day with us. But that makes me schedule the podcast super early. Just another little side piece of advice. But my number one for our Friday 5 is, if you're looking to podcast, check out Riverside. It is amazing. So many cool features. I have just been blown away. I am a tech girly. I love all of these little ins and outs of technology and apps and platforms, and Riverside is like podcast haven. So my number one for my Friday 5, if you want to get into podcasting, is check out Riverside. It is free. It is amazing. There are paid features. You can check out that if you want to, but if you're balling on a budget like Stephanie and I are, then Riverside, the free one, the free feature, yes, ma'am. It is so good. So that's my first hot take. My second hot take for podcasting is, I know how it is to start a podcast on a budget. If you're watching the video feature right now, then you can see my trusty little pink mic. It is amazing. I love her so much. She was about $25 on Amazon, 2-day shipping, all the good things. Didn't spend hardly any money on her, but it's a podcast, you guys. If you don't have anything at all, you want to have good sound. Fun little behind the scenes for my number 2 piece of advice for podcasting, which is invest in a good microphone, is that my husband and I had a podcast for a short season a few years ago. It was called the Purpose and Praise Podcast, and you can still go listen to the episodes. There's only about 5 or 6 of them up, but they're really, really fun. Still available everywhere you find your podcast. But we recorded on my phone. We didn't have any equipment. Late at night, after the kids would go to bed, we would sit down and we would record the episode of the Purpose and Praise podcast on my phone. And I did everything in the Spotify for Podcasters app, and that's the way we did it. We didn't spend a single dime. But the sound quality was not what I would have wanted it to be had we been doing this on a serious level as we are with the Book Solid podcast. So after a few episodes, about half a season with good old trusty pink mic, she is still working. She works fine, but I just knew after getting feedback from our guests, I knew it was time to invest in a new microphone. And the microphone that I recommend is the same one Stephanie recommends, and that is this Blue Yeti mic. You will not regret it. If you're not going to spend money on anything at all for your podcast, spend money on your microphone. It is worth it. Like I said, it's a podcast. A lot of people aren't going to watch the video. A lot of people are only going to recognize and know the podcast from podcasting apps. So you want good sound quality. So my number 2 take for my Friday 5 is, if you're not going to spend money on anything else for podcasting, you want a quality mic. Trust me on that, bestie. Just trust me on it. The next question I get a lot as far as equipment goes, and this is going to be my number 3 for our Friday 5, is headphones. Do you need them? I don't know. It's completely up to you. It is a preference thing. If you are, recording your podcast in a public space that may have free Wi-Fi or have conference rooms and people may be in or out, yeah, headphones are great. But if you're like me right now out here in the podcast studio, or what is going to be the podcast studio, you might not need them. I don't have them in right now, but I do have them handy in case I decide to pop them in. It is just really a preference thing. We've interviewed guests that have had headphones in. We've interviewed guests that are headphone-less. So headphones is a total preference. If you want to look really cool with your clunky podcasting headphones, go for it, girlfriend. I invested in a pair of those, also super cheap on Amazon. I think they were like $18. They give me the worst headache. By the end of the hour that we did the podcast, I was like twitching with pain in my ears and on top of my head. So I did bite the bullet and invest in some AirPods. I needed them anyways. I've never owned a pair of headphones. Yes, I am insane. So I just invested in those anyways, but for other reasons outside of just podcasting. And let me tell you, if you never owned a pair of AirPods, it's like a luxury. It's just like, I felt so bougie sticking my little AirPods in, because like I said, I have never had headphones my entire life. I just never saw a need for them for any reason. I wasn't a big music listener as far as just personally. I love to play some worship music throughout the house, but I wasn't a big just headphone person, I guess is what to say. I am rambling about headphones. Oh my goodness. But anyway, so if you want headphones for your podcast, you can have them. If you don't, that's up to you. The next question that I get, which will be my number 4 for this week's podcast episode, is, do you have to do video? And the answer is no. We made it all the way through season 1. We're almost done with season 1. We wrap up season 1 at the end of August, but we made it all the way until now. It's July without any video, and we are just now figuring out video and all of the behind the scenes things of podcasting. For the longest time, we have been doing this just like casual sisters and hanging out and not worrying about video. So you don't have to have video. Is it good for social media content if you're going to be promoting your podcast on social media? Heck yeah, it's super fun. I love watching the little clips from Rachel Hollis's podcast or Sadie Robertson's Whoa, That's Good podcast. I love watching the little clips. I love seeing them curled up on their little couches. It's such a personal touch to be able to put a face to the voice. But you don't have to. You don't have to do it. If you're not one that likes to be in front of the camera or be videoed or anything like that, don't worry about it, sister. Just use your voice. So that's my number 4, is video necessary. It's up to you, just like headphones. It's kind of a preference thing. You can make that decision. The next thing is, where do I stream my podcast? So if you are using Riverside, then once you get done, it will give you an audio file. When you're done with that audio file, you can upload it to something called Spotify. Podcasters app it's just Podcasters app now, but it will distribute your podcast anywhere and everywhere that you want to distribute it. So that is just a fun little piece of advice. That's my number 5, is how to get my podcast out there. And I will say that pushing your podcast to social media to these podcasting apps is one thing, but if you're not promoting on social media and you're not sharing your podcast other places, then you really aren't going to have that big of a reach. And so Stephanie and I have a little following on social media, and we have seen the most success through sharing our podcast with our bookish besties. So if you're looking to start a podcast, just go ahead and be prepared to launch some social media with it, or launch it on your own social media. You can't just start a podcast where you're using your voice and then stay quiet about it, because we all want more voices in this space. I know that social media and all of this content creation world can seem like a very noisy place, and it is, but there is room for your voice, and we want to hear your voice. We want to talk about books with you. I am even considering just starting a fun little kids podcast where we just talk about kids books, or just read bedtime stories. Like, you can literally do anything in this space, and someone somewhere will love it and appreciate it. So those are my Friday 5 for podcasting. I know that this was a little all over the place. This is my first Friday 5, and I took 0 notes and have just been winging it, but now I know to kind of write things down and get a plan before I jump on here and just start rambling with you guys. But that is my Friday 5, and I am just so excited to get to share more fun things with you each week and get to connect with you guys on an even funner and more personal level. If you want to find my podcast equipment recommendations, I will link my Amazon storefront in the show notes, and you will be able to find everything right there. And I would love to connect with you on social media. If you are on Instagram, then please hop over to the Booked Solid Pod Instagram. It is at Booked Solid Pod, and send me a message and say, hey, I want to start a podcast. I listened to your podcast episode and I want to do this. I feel the Lord calling me to share my voice in this space, and I would love to hold your hand and be your biggest hype girl. You can ask anybody on Bookstagram. I try to be the ultimate hype girl. So I'm here for you. If you want to start a podcast of any sort, I want to be your biggest cheerleader. Until next time, I am Hannah Caitlin Parker, and you are listening to the Booked Solid Podcast, and that was my Friday 5.